Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about interest. Please make sure you have both worksheets in front of you. So one should be all of your vocabulary and the other should say interest at the top. The first paper we're going to fill out is the vocab sheet, and the first 4 vocab words are what we're going to look at today. So let's look at that first word. It says simple interest. Simple interest calculates the money earned from a percentage fee on a principal amount. Principal is the amount of money deposited, borrowed, or invested. Often this is your starting amount. Your rate is the rate of interest per year, and this is often expressed as a percent. So if they give you your rate as a percent, it must be converted to a decimal to use it in our formula. And we'll come back to this formula in a minute. And then our time is the amount of time in years you have to pay off the loan. So go ahead and flip to the second sheet, but please keep this out so you can refer back to it as I go through these vocab terms within the problem. Okay, so now looking at the second paper, we're going to go through an example problem. So at the top is our formula for finding interest, and they break down the parts for you. So I stands for our simple interest. P is our principal amount, so that's what we borrow or invest it. Remember, that's usually your starting number. R is the rate of interest. And remember, that has to be written as a decimal when you're using it in this formula. And then T is our time that the money is borrowed, and that's in years. So our formula is interest equals principal times rate times time. So if you look at this first problem, it says to buy a car, Jessica borrowed $15,000. So right there, that $15,000 is our principal amount because she borrowed it, and that's our starting number. She borrowed that for 3 years, so 3 would be our time. And then it says she at an annual rate of 9%, so our R is 9%. And then it asks how much interest will she pay if she pays the entire loan off at the end of the 3rd year? What is the total amount? So this is a 2-part question. First one, it's asking us to find our interest, and that's what they set up on this left-hand side right here. So they used our formula, interest equals principal times rate times time. They plugged it in, so they plugged in 15,000, and then notice they changed our 9% into a decimal, so that would be written as 0.09. like they did here, and then times time. And when they did that, they got an interest of $4,050. So that was the first question that we solved. The second part asked us to find the total amount that she would repay. So if you look on the right-hand side, the formula for finding your total amount is your principal plus your interest. So my principal amount back in the original problem was $15,000. And then we found our interest was $4,050. So when you add them together, Jessica will pay a total of $19,050. So now let's try some together. All right, our problem says to buy a laptop, Elaine borrowed $2,000. So right there, we know our principal is going to be $2,000 for 3 years, so our time is 3. and she borrowed $2,000 for 3 years at an annual simple interest rate of 5%. So my rate is going to be 5%, but remember we have to write it as a decimal, so it would be 0.05. And this is going to be a two-part question. So they ask, how much interest will she pay if she pays the entire loan off at the end of the 3rd year? So let's just start by finding our interest. So remember, interest equals principal times rate times time. So we can plug in our information. Interest equals 2,000 times 0.05 times time, which is 3. Go ahead and plug this into your calculator. I'll give you a minute. Okay, you should have gotten an answer of our interest being $300. So back on the left, I'll put $300. Okay, so the first part is done. Now the second part of this question asked us to find the total amount that she will repay. So the bottom part says Elaine will pay, and we can fill in our 300 because we know she'll pay $300 in interest. And we have to find A. So remember, our total amount is our principal plus our interest. We know our principal from the beginning was 2,000. And then we're adding our $300 of interest. So the total amount she will have to pay is $2,300. So we can fill that in over here, and we're done. All right, on the back here, it says Nancy invested $6,000 in a bond at a yearly rate of 3%. So we know two things. Our principal is $6,000, and we have a rate of 3%, which can be written as a decimal as 0.03. And then it says she earned $450 in interest. So they're giving us our I, and then they're asking us how long was the money invested. So we're trying to find our T. We're still going to use the same formula, just our procedure for solving is going to be a little different. So let's still use I equals P times R times T. Our interest was $450. Our principal was $6,000. Our rate was 0.03, and we'll just use T as our variable. So in this case, we have to solve this equation for T. So the easiest way to do it is to start and do 6,000 times 0.03. Go ahead and do that in your calculator. When you do that, you should get 180, and then bring everything else down. From here, we need to get T by itself, so I can divide by 180 on both sides of my equal sign, and when you do that, you should get 2.5 equals T. So what we just found is the money was invested for 2.5 years. Remember, the time is always in years. Go ahead and try the next problem. You're finding time again, and then check back with the video to check your answer. All right, hopefully you solved the next problem. So let's check your work. In this problem, we had a principal of $3,500, a rate of 6%, so 0.06, and our interest was $945. And then we had to find our time. So I equals P times R times T. 945 equals 3,500 times 0.06 times T. When you do this multiplication, you should have gotten 210. Bring everything else down. and then divide by 210 on both sides of the equation, you should have gotten 4.5 equals t. So our final answer should be 4.5 years. All right, and looking at this next question, it says Mr. Johnson borrowed $8,000 for 4 years to make home improvements. If he repaid a total amount of $10,320, at what interest rate did he borrow the money? So this is going to be a two-step process because in our equation, we currently have our principal of $8,000. We have our time, which was 4 years. And then we have our total amount, our A, which was $10,320. So in order to find our rate, we first have to find our interest. So remember from the front, in order to find the total amount, we did principal plus our interest, which means we can work backwards to solve for our I. So if I plug in $10,320 was my total amount, $8,000 was my principal, I can figure out how much interest I had. So subtract 8,000 from both sides, and you should figure out that the interest was $2,320. So that was the first part of our problem, $2,320. So now that I know that, I can solve for my rate. I know that's $2,320, so now I can use my interest equals principal times rate times time to solve for R. So let's plug in what we know. Our interest was $2,320. Our principal was $8,000. We don't know our rate, and our time was 4. So solving this will look similar to when we solved time. So we want to start by multiplying 8,000 times 4. When we do that, we should get 32,000 and bring down the rest of our equation. And then we'll divide to get our variable by itself. Now, when you do that, you're going to get a number that looks like 0.0725 equals R. Remember in the beginning we said in these equations we have to work with rate as a decimal. So once you get an answer like this, your final answer should be put back in a percent form. So if I have 0.0725, in order to change it back into a percent, I can multiply by 100 or move your decimal 2 places. So as a percent, my rate should be 7.25%. And that should be your final answer. Okay, so go ahead and try the last problem and then check back with the video to check your answer. Okay, so hopefully you're done this next problem. You should have found that your principal was $9,000, your time was 10 years, and your total amount was $20,000. So I set it up already. To find my interest, I need to subtract 9,000 from my total amount. So you should have found that your interest was $11,000. After you find that out, we can use our other formula to solve for our rate. So our interest was $11,000. Our principal was $9,000. We don't know R, and our time was 10. Multiply first. So you should have had 11,000 equals 90,000 times R. Divide by 90,000. Divide by 90,000. And when you do this, you should get 0.0122 equals R. But remember our final step, we want to put our answer in percent form. so 0.122. Move your decimal twice, so your percent should have been 1.22% was the interest rate. Go ahead and upload a picture of all of your papers, so the vocab sheet, the front of this paper, and the back of this paper, and then go ahead and start that practice activity.